I'm David Edwards from the Okta Product Acceleration team. In this video, I'll walk through setting up the Entitlement Management integration for Microsoft Office 365. This will be in 3 steps: set up and exploring the entitlements, create the entitlement policy, and create entitlement bundles. The 2 types of entitlements for Office 365 in the integration are roles, or admin roles in Office 365, and licenses, or licensed apps in Office 365. It's worth mentioning users assigned to an Office 365 application in Okta must be licensed in Office 365. A manual import from Office 365 will remove any users assigned to the app that don't have licenses assigned. Thus, you should not run an import before ensuring that the assigned users have licenses. Let's start with the setup and exploring entitlements. Starting point is an Office 365 application that has been configured for single sign-on but not provisioning. The basic steps are the same as for any other entitlement management aware application. Enable governance, configure provisioning, and then check the entitlements. We'll start with the newly created Office 365 application. There are some users assigned, as you can see. Turn on governance. We go to the General tab, go down to Identity Governance, and enable the governance engine. This will set up the necessary objects in entitlement management for this application. And as you saw with the message there, it's a process that's running in the background. If we refresh the screen, we should see that we have a new tab for governance. And if we look at the assignments page, the UI has changed slightly to support entitlements. So the next we need to do is turn on provisioning. Now this is the same as before entitlement management. It's the standard turning on API integration for Office 365. We're going to authenticate with Office 365, selecting the account that we're using, and accepting the various scopes for that integration. Save that. And as always, we need to turn on the various flows for provisioning. So that's it. That's all we need to do to set up provisioning. In the back end, it's going to do some synchronization. It's doing an automatic import. Now, if we go to the new governance tab, we can see that we now have 2 types of entitlements: licenses and roles. We can see the list of licenses that have been imported and also the list of roles. One thing to note, and you can see this here, the data will be read-only. For Office 365 and the other integrations, we're pulling in a defined set of entitlements and only the values that are there. We can't modify that set of entitlements. We can't modify the entitlement values within entitlement management. That has to be done on the target system. Next, we'll explore entitlement policy. Entitlement policy is used to automatically grant access to entitlements, similar to what we do with group rules for group assignments. You have 1 policy per application and can have multiple rules per policy. So I'm going to create 2 policies. I'm going to create a default policy so that every user, create a default rule so that every user gets at least 1 license. And then I'm going to create a rule for user administration. So select users will get that policy. So let's start by adding the first rule. And this is the default licenses. And like we do with group rules, we use expression language to define what users this will apply to. So I'm going to set it to be user.profile.userType. And I know that there is no user type of XYZ, so this will catch every user. And let's just check with a user we have. All right, so the user will be included, so that rule is valid. Now, what we want to do is the default rule, we're going to set that every user in the system will get 2 licenses. They're going to get the Exchange. Right, so we're going to set this Exchange Online Plan 2, and they're also going to get Teams. Right, so save the rule. Every person assigned to this application will get that default set of licenses. And now we want to add another one, and we've got the need to set up some user admin a rule for user admins. Now, I know that we have some users in here that have a title of user admin. And again, I know Marge is one of those users. So if we check with Marge, see the user will be included. What I'm going to do is set firstly some licenses. Right, so I've got, I'm going to set Azure Active Directory Premium. I'm going to set Azure Rights Management, and I'm going to set Cloud App Security. I'm also going to add a role, and the role I'm adding is the user administrator. Right, so now I have two rules. I've got a default license rule so that everyone will get both Exchange Online and Teams, but I've also got the user admin rule where we have those with the title of user admin will get the user administrator role as well as 3 other licenses. Now, this is in a draft state. To publish it, we can see draft here. We apply the policy. And now we can go back and check the users. So I have a number of users here. If we look at Marge, we know Marge would have both of those applied. But if we look at the entitlements, nothing has been set yet. There is a delay. It takes some time for the policy to evaluate. We can kickstart it by using this revert to policy button. So if I revert to policy, you'll see it will change to an entitlement of policy. If we look now, we can see that Marge has the user administrator role and 5 licenses. So it's a merging of those license values because she met the conditions for both rules. If we have a look at, say, Seymour Skinner here, similarly, he won't have any yet. If I revert to policy, because he didn't have the user administrator title, he should only have those 2 default licenses for Teams and Exchange. Now, because these users were added before we turned on provisioning, standard for any OIN integration, we need to force that initial provisioning. So we have this option to provision user. If I kick that off, that is now going to trigger the provisioning events to push those changes down to Office 365. And I can go and have a look at the logs for this event. And you can see we have events saying that we're pushing Homer, Lisa, Marge, various users down to the target system. So that's it. That's setting up a policy so that users get either a default or a specialized set of entitlements. Now, the last thing we look at is bundles. And bundles are a collection of entitlements within an application, and that will soon change so we can do them across applications. You can collect bundles together to represent a job role or an access role. In our case, we could create a bundle that contains both licenses and roles, which is what we'll do. Right, so I want to create a bundle that represents people getting access to Office 365. So I'll just call this Office Tools. And actually what I'll do is just set it to be the Office 365. So I've got this Office 365 Pro Plus license. So I'm going to expose that as something that an end user can request. So I create that bundle. The bundle's been created, call it Office Tools. If I go across to my access request interface, I have a number of bundles here. I'll just force that update. It would cycle around periodically as access request does. And we should see, here's our new Office Tools access request. Now, I have a draft entitlement request type. So I'm just going to duplicate that. Let's just call it Office Tools. And I've got this action to assign the user to a bundle. Now let's change it to this grant access to entitlement bundle action. And to set it up, I'm setting up the user, and then I select the bundle from that list. Here's that Office Tools. And that's it. I've now set up, when I publish this, it will be then available for an end user to request access. That access will be granted to the bundle, and we could see the user assigned to that. We could also create an access certification campaign that would review both direct assignment through policy and requested through bundles, and have managers or what have you review that. But we won't go through that in this video.